Georgia did all kinds of unspeakably evil things to Oregon yesterday. And there's a certain tone that we like to take when games get this out of whack. And we really probably just need to take it to the next level this year. Colin, go ahead and give it to me. This was pure violence in Atlanta, Georgia yesterday. And for those of you who allowed your children to continue to watch this game after you saw what was unfolding, I'm not here to tell anyone how it's to parent, but shame on you. This was what we call a Sarah McLachlan special. You've seen those pet abuse commercials. You've heard that sad, soft piano music in the background. If I were broadcasting this game, if I were in the producer's chair, that would have been the sound bed. From about the second Georgia drive on, it was a TVMA bloodbath. It was a wood chipper. That's what it was that Oregon got thrown into. So I am not watching the game live. I am in the unique position where I see score updates, but I don't get to see the game live. And I've watched it since. If you have not watched this replay, let me save you some time. Any of you out there who have seen Jurassic Park and you've seen that scene where you first get introduced to the velociraptors, and the way you get introduced to the velociraptors is because they take that cow and they drop it into the velociraptor cage? That was this game yesterday. Terrible. What Jeff Goldblum looked like watching those raptors tear apart that cow in like 13 seconds flat, I looked like on a plane with my earphones on watching this disaster in Atlanta. It was really bad. Probably a lot worse than it should be. It was really bad. So, like I was telling you, I'm seeing the score, but I cannot watch the game because I'm at the Arkansas game yesterday. So instead, I'm just getting score updates. So you can imagine my surprise when I go back and I look at the box score and I say, all right, let's see. They probably ran for half a mile, didn't they? Nope. Georgia's leading rusher had, less than 50 yards, I think it was. So then you ask, did Oregon turn the ball over 9 times? No. What happened is I saw Rusty Manziel over on Dogs 24/7, or as the streets would call him, Coach Rusty, and he made the point that I'm about to make. I'm not going to go as far as say I'm stealing it, but I kind of am. That was a wake-up call. That was a little bit of a message. That was a recruiting tool as much as a football game for Georgia yesterday. See, there's been talk kind of behind the scenes. A lot of fans say it too over the last couple of years. Georgia, they play good defense, they run the ball, but if you're a receiver, you got to get out of there on the first thing smoking. You got to take the Jermaine Burton route, and he looked pretty good at Alabama yesterday, because you're not going to have your talents fully utilized. Well, even though they're coming off a national championship, I think Kirby Smart looks around and he knows how unique that situation was he had last year. He had a generational defense. He played an Alabama team that beat him the first time around because they had those kind of athletes that they took advantage of at wide receiver in the SEC title game. Then they didn't have them anymore in the second half of the national title game. I'm not trying to take anything away. You won the national title. But I think moving forward, what Kirby said is, we've got to have those and we've got to use them. We can't just get them and not use them. We can't have ours go elsewhere and do way better there than they were here, because that just validates everything negative that people say about us on the recruiting trail. They're not going to be able to say many things negative about us. That's what they're going to hone in on. So yesterday, Kirby Smart saw fit to just rain it all over Oregon, because they pretty much knew they could win this game however they wanted to. And afterwards, Kirby Smart was not shy about what he told Dan Lanning. He said, Dan knows. He said, Dan will never say it out loud, but Dan knows we got better players than they do. I mean, imagine. Some people call that athletic arrogance. I call it the truth. Imagine being so secure and being so unthreatened by a team the AP has ranked top 15. Couldn't be the JP. The AP has ranked top 15, that you just sit there post-game like you're with your papaw on the porch down in Bainbridge, and you say, well, yeah, we beat them, but their players aren't as good as ours. I mean, what do you expect, papaw? Come on now. They kind of suck, compared to us at least. I don't think Oregon sucks. Here's the problem. Oregon was out-athleted yesterday. The gap athletically between Georgia and Oregon is not 7 touchdowns, friends, or 6 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns. That's not the gap. The line on that game was big, but by big I mean about 17. That's the kind of gap you're looking at. The problem for Oregon is something else entered the equation, and it was the fact that that staff in Athens kind of worked that staff in Eugene. Now, that's not a shocker, because that staff in Eugene is brand new. And it's to be expected when you go up against one of the best in the country, a machine moving at full speed, and you're starting from scratch and you've never done it before. I know everyone wants to throw acid all over this thing and completely forget any hope after you see this one example kind of borne out on national TV. That didn't help. But this is kind of what happens. They call it baptism by fire, and that's exactly what it was yesterday. Oregon will probably be better for this down the road. I know it doesn't feel good right now, but I'll get to Oregon in a second. I got a couple of thoughts on them. There were padlock stats everywhere in this game. For those of you who are new to this show, the padlock stat is just the one stat where if I showed it to you on Friday, you'd know how the game was going to end. You didn't need to watch it. Well, they're all over the place. Every bit of the box score is a padlock stat. So I just look and I say, if you told me Friday Georgia was going to have 9 yards per play, they averaged nearly a first down every time they snapped the ball. Yeah, I'd probably feel pretty good about putting my money on Georgia. There are no guarantees with this team. So let me be real for a second. I know it's all fun and games down in my home state today to laugh about what happened yesterday because it was a splattering in every sense of the word. There was just Oregon all over the place yesterday in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It reminded me of Bama opening against Miami. I think that was last year. Bama just painted the walls with Miami's blood last year. And you looked at them and you said, that team's unbeatable. Well, they were unbeatable that day. A lot of twists and turns to a season. I mean, you can have a lot of injuries. You could have cracks on your team that maybe your week one opponent wasn't built to expose, but someone else down the road can. Football does not work like a lot of people would suggest it works yesterday, where, all right, let's skip to the national title. We already know who's going to play. No, you don't. No, you don't. You got favorites, and if you want to try and chart that after week one, be my guest. Georgia's starting at a really high level. Okay, this is not me trying to knock them at all. It's quite the opposite when you see where I'm going with this. But it reminded me of the way Bama opened against Miami. And then Bama, I mean, they were a very good team. They probably got a little bit inflated because you watch what they do. You watch what Georgia did yesterday, and you just think to yourself, even if they're only 80% of what we're seeing today, isn't that still good enough to beat everyone? Well, that's also not how football works. But like I said, a lot of twists and turns. Here's what I took away. This team's really good. This Georgia team's really good. Probably great. That remains to be seen, though. We get the season to determine that. I just want to remind you of the rarefied air that this Georgia program is in. They just came off a national championship. And there are only about 2 or 3 programs in America, sometimes only one at a time, where you look and you say, that team doesn't have to rebuild. They can just reload. You know how hard it is to get your program there? And Kirby Smart's got his program there. And unlike Nick Saban at Alabama, who finally figured out the way to do that after a long time of perfecting that process of his, this is the first job Kirby's ever had at the head coaching level. Now, he's several years in now, and he got to learn under the very best to ever do it. But still, a lot of guys coached under Nick Saban and went and crashed and burned fantastically on their own. And Kirby Smart, after 1 year of getting his feet under him, has never looked back. And they've gotten better and better and better. And now they've got a program to where you win a national championship, and if you didn't know better, you would suggest complacency may set in. There's a reason we didn't talk about that at all with this team. Or if we did, it was me saying they're not going to have complacency concerns. It's because, well, number one, I've got a fairly good read on the program. And number two, I know how they operate. It's the same way Bama operates. They're just immune to some of the issues that affect normal programs. Now, they do not have immunity from the consequences of success. There are some things that Georgia has to deal with that you'll never have to deal with because they're that good. So they're a different little bag of issues, but complacency is not one of them. Number one, because hardly anyone talked about them all summer because there were so many other off-field issues going on. Not there, but in general. And number two, you can't afford to get complacent there because of what happens in practice every day, which is never seen by the public, so you kind of conveniently forget about it. Those guys can't get complacent. It doesn't matter what they did last year. They'll get their job taken. Hey, you see that Starks kid yesterday? Malachi Starks? Did anyone text you that name yesterday? Folks around Georgia have known about him for a while. He's one of the best athletes they have on their team right now. He's a true freshman. You saw him flash yesterday on your screen. He will end up being a top 5 draft pick, top 10 draft pick when all's said and done. I'm saying that about him, and he has not played. Well, he's played 1 game. so far. And I don't think started yesterday. No, he didn't start. He is just an example of the kind of alien they have on their roster that you've never heard of before. And that guy is at practice every day. So I don't really care if you started last year. If you have the slightest inkling of complacency in your bones, Kirby Smart just keeps bringing guys like Malachi Starks in. And so you can either get complacent or you can do yourself a favor and look at the locker next to you and say, what is that? A freshman. Yeah. So I don't worry about complacency with Bama anymore. I don't worry about it with them anymore. They are very good, okay? That's what we know about them now. We know that Alabama's really good. We will find out whether these teams are great in due time, but you know what was on display yesterday? A good old-fashioned freeze point special. The freeze point, it's the first time we've broken it out this year. We only talk about it with the most elite teams. We use it frequently with Bama. We will use it with Georgia. Ohio State some years, Clemson some years, we use it. And that is the conversation that when those teams are at their best, there are only 2 or 3 or 4 teams even capable of playing with them. The same way that if you have a cup of water here, I'll use this coffee. If you have water and you put it in a room and it's 36 degrees, it doesn't matter if you leave it in there a day or a year, it's not going to freeze. 34 degrees, 33 degrees, 32.8 degrees, it's not going to freeze. There's a freeze point. It's 32.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And only when you get it at that number or lower do you stand a chance of that liquid freezing. Now, the question becomes, how much below 32.4 can you go? Because then it'll freeze quicker. In college football, there's a level of play. There's a level of athleticism, coaching, and overall caliber of play that you have to possess to stand a chance against that team, Georgia, against Bama, and mainly in big-time games. I'm not talking about catching them napping, which you rarely do, but in playoff games, when you have their full focus, there's a level that you have to have that hardly anyone has. And Oregon did not have the requisite freeze point yesterday. And so what you saw is the natural byproduct of when you get that team's attention for a solid 4 months and you don't meet the freeze point, there is no limit to the amount of atrocities they can commit against you. And they could have made it a lot worse if they wanted to yesterday. So the other thing that I have to point out with Oregon is I think it's noteworthy that even as bad as it got yesterday, you did not see Ty Thompson at quarterback at all. I've been of the camp that it's a little bit laughable how secretive people are with their depth charts. You know, at Oregon, this was an example. They were very secretive about who's going to start at quarterback up there. Well, it wasn't a secret. Everyone knew Bo Nix was going to start. Ty Thompson did not get in this game yesterday. And that is now 2 coaching staffs where we've seen them unwilling to play him no matter how dire the situation looks. That tells you everything you need to know about his development. I'm not there. I'm not at practice. I don't know a thing about it. I just know the lack of decision to put him in games, especially one as ugly as yesterday when you could have gotten him work. If you trust him at all to be on the field, it speaks volumes. So it's Bo Nix. Dan Lanning said it after the game. It's Bo Nix. Look, that team in Oregon can still win the Pac-12. I mean, who in the world? Who in the world's the favorite in the Pac-12? USC did what they were supposed to yesterday. They didn't lose to food. In fact, they put food in a blender. They beat Rice by 500,000. Utah lost competitively. Oregon did what they did in Atlanta. I don't know who the favorite is out in the Pac-12. It's going to tell me a lot how they look against Eastern Washington Saturday, though. You know, because Oregon got badly outcoached yesterday, in case anyone didn't notice. And their secondary had issues, too. And Eastern Washington, of the FCS variety, is not exactly going to take it easy on them in the passing game either. So let's keep an eye on that. Georgia, really, really good team. That's about as far as I'm willing to go for any team, Georgia or otherwise, after 1 week.